Hello YouTubers, Joe Kersey here. On August 24th, 2017, Thursday, at 14:15 in the afternoon Eastern Time. I'm having a Guinness today. Yes, it's out of the bottle. Yes, I know that outrages some people, but nonetheless, one just has to deal with what one has. I mean, I don't have the luxury of sitting in an Irish pub right now and having some guy go through that whole rigmarole of drawing the thing out and letting the head sit and this, that, and the other. Plus the bottle cap says, enjoy straight from the bottle. Well, you got to believe that, don't you? I want to talk about something moderately serious today, and maybe I can make it a bit entertaining from time to time. It deals with historiography and how history is written and how historical change is interpreted and how historical change has various deep roots and so forth. And then toward the end, I want to talk about some of this PC, let's send history down the memory hole nonsense that's going on in this, certainly in the United States today. Although in England we're trying to take down statues of Cecil Rhodes, and I guess lately in Australia, take down this statue of Captain Cook or rewrite the caption on its plinth or that sort of thing. I guess there's a McCary guy, I think he was the first colonial governor. That's what outrages people, you know. They all have to go to their safe space or some bullshit. That's later on. Now last night I was reading in my book here by Peter Marshall, Heretics and Believers, A History of the English Reformation, and I'll leave full bibliographical information in the description below. I read this one paragraph, and I'm going to read you this one paragraph, and that's all fair use copyright stuff, so don't get your panties in a wad, YouTube. This is dealing with it's the early 1520s. Well, actually, it's in 1531. It's in the 1520s to 1530 time in England, and of course, Luther's ideas are present in England. Henry VIII has not initiated his change in the English church as yet. This part of Peter Marshall's book is dealing with sort of the run-up and the ideological ferment, or the ferment of ideas, the interaction of ideas between lay people, professional clergy, midline clergy, upper hierarchy, how all of these assumptions and experiences and attitudes interacted. I'll read you this paragraph first, and then I'm going to go on from there. And he references Hugh Latimer, who later, while he was burned under Mary, after he had become a bishop, appointed a bishop under, in the previous years, and he was probably one of the most ideologically clear writers at the time he was burned in Oxford. But at this point, he was just a standard, run-of-the-mill, no, not run-of-the-mill, but he was, a thinker in the English church, and he was still very much, as all these guys considered themselves, all these guys considered themselves very much Orthodox Roman Catholics, or Catholics, because the term Roman Catholic hadn't come into use then, because there was just the Catholic Church, as there is today, except it's got a couple of branches, or 3 branches. But it's still a Catholic, a universal Christian church. Leaving that aside, let me read you this. Hugh Latimer's description of religious transformation, meaning how you come to appreciate a new point of view in your religious life, written in December 1531, is both revealing and enigmatic. Contemporaries believed conversions of this sort were the work of God, or if your attitudes that you adopted, or if the attitudes you adopted were contrary to other people's attitudes, the work of the devil. Some historians, have rightly warned us there was more to the Reformation than a succession of individual religious conversions, noting that most people don't undergo one. Most people do not undergo a religious conversion. Most people kind of go along to get along. But without such conversions, and here's the key part here, but without such conversions, there could have been no Reformation. And attempting to untangle them, and here we're getting to it, attempting to untangle them draws us to the mysterious seed beds in which change first took root. For historians have to make sense of a paradox, that a convert's radical rejection of the old and familiar could not come out of nowhere, that it must somehow be grounded in earlier attitudes and experiences. A new idea cannot come out of nowhere. It has to be grounded in earlier attitudes and experiences. And that gets us to how and why historical change happens, particularly in ideas, but in events as well, practices, customs, language, sayings. All ideas are the products of previous ideas. Whether it's something very obvious or whether it's something that's been very much sort of working its way through an individual's head over time. And all of a sudden, wham, new insight. But without the previous experiences, that insight would not have occurred. That insight is grounded in previous experiences and thoughts in that individual's head. And the same with ideas in society in general. Within the Catholic Church in England at that time, there were ideas that certain parts of the Catholic Church as an institution, as an organization were, well, I'll say corrupt, but not corrupt, but just there were things that could be changed, all right. And when you start to want to change the practices, that lets you examine the ideas that caused those practices to be adopted in the first place. And so there might be some questionings. There might be some, oh, here we can improve this. And that was the meaning of reform very early on. Let's reform some of the practices. But then you get thinking about, oh, maybe the ideas that led to this weren't right. Maybe we need to go back farther and change how we think about what started these practices. And so when the full-blown Protestant ideas emerged about 5 to 10 years later, you know, I'm not talking about Lutheranism, because Lutheranism had already come about at this time. And that was in Germany. I'm talking about the English Reformation. Before even they could take hold, other people had to sort of be, you know, the seed bed had to have been prepared by previous ideas. You know, unspoken ideas, a lot of them, you know, in the heads of people who consider themselves absolutely standard Orthodox Catholics, soon to be known as Roman Catholics. No, not all that soon, but that's what they're called now. So this man's, the emphasis in this man's book is to illustrate or to argue that a lot of the sort of classic, standard, old line history of the English Reformation history, you know, sort of had this very disjointed whew, like wham, out of the blue, here comes the Reformation. You know, few people thought about this and caused it to happen. No, you know, it wouldn't have been so. It would not have been as easy to impose this on the English population if there hadn't been sort of a widespread awareness of certain ideas that were contained in the ideas that led up to the full-blown Protestant Reformation. Now, a lot of people may not have agreed with them, but, you know, they go along to get along. They go along to get along. Then obviously there's the few that vehemently espouse them, and there's the few that are willing to take the consequences of vehemently opposing them. Or in Mary's reign, vice versa. And then back in Elizabeth's reign, the shift. Which brings me to sort of like the real point of today, in that there's a lot of folks that want to eliminate any reference to the Confederacy, or in Australia, this, you know, Captain Cook and McCary, in Oxford, you know, the statue of Cecil Rhodes, and other things too. Those are just the obvious examples. You know, oh no, you know, I walk by that statue and I trigger, oh, I got to go to my safe space, you know. I guess in Yale today, they were going to cover up or chisel off a carving on one of the buildings there that shows it's like almost like a gargoyle, you know, and you've got like a pilgrim with a musket, you know, and here's this Aboriginal American's head, you know, pointing at it, you know, and of course the Aboriginal American's got a bow, you know, which he would probably gladly use to shoot the guy with the musket at some point, you know. So it's history, guys. It happened. The people who were acting at that time did not have our value systems, well, actually, maybe they did. Maybe they did have our value systems. Maybe they did have our moral sensibilities, but they expressed them differently. Now, unfortunately, a number of them expressed their moral sensibility in thinking that slavery was okay. Obviously, it's not okay. But for a long time, a lot of people thought it was okay. Or they thought it was just, that's the way things are. I may as well make use of it. reprehensible in our eyes now, yes, certainly, but not necessarily then. So, there's some statues of these guys with their quotes that are on the base of the statues that have nothing to do with slavery. It has to do with liberty and equality and, striving toward that. For which they did a lot of work. But, oh no, and of course then you've got the Southern people that thought they were, on the right side of history as well. History is written by the victors, folks. The winner always writes the history and gets to determine the game plan and the ground rules for the next set of years. Like it or not, that's how it is. So, it's very Orwellian, the ministry of truth. Let's send everything that's unpleasant in the past, that doesn't agree with what we want to promote now, down the memory hole. The Confederate leaders were assholes. They weren't really working in good faith. We send them down the memory hole. Robert E. Lee, probably one of the finest human beings that walked the planet, except for the fact he owned slaves and led the armies on the wrong side of this war. Send him down the memory hole. This is a serious historiological issue, as well as a serious issue of truth, just living with truth, be it pleasant or unpleasant. And the thing about truth is, pleasant or unpleasant is, you can always learn from it and reflecting on it. And so having these guys up in public spaces offers an opportunity to reflect on how we actually have, as a country and as a people, gotten a lot better. Gotten a lot better. Yes, we can do more. Yes, we can try to stop. We can try to eliminate the implied crime of driving while black. And yes, we all know that happens. We all know that happens. I've known a couple of my black friends that just cruising around innocently in what would be the wrong part of town, i.e. a very rich white part of town, and they've been pulled over because they were going to, because they were in a white part of town where there's a lot of money, and they look a little free-spirited. Yes, we all know that happens. Yeah, it does. The idea is not to get shot, so basically do what the hell the cop tells you to do. All right, enough of that. So that's my little. I wanted you to be aware of this book and this author and that idea. So I'll say bye-bye, YouTube.